everyone, welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Nina and I help people to declutter their minds and their homes using practical applications of psychology. And today we're going to be talking all about how to use decluttering as a healing journey. And I'll also be sharing my own story about how I used decluttering as a healing journey. I wanted to start by talking about what clutter actually is. That's probably the most frequent question that I get asked. How do I know if something is clutter? Well, we can think of clutter as anything we don't love, need, is no longer serving us or adding value, or that doesn't support our current lifestyle. We can also think of it as anything that distracts us or prevents us from having the time and space for things that matter. And really figuring out how we can make these distinctions is part of the process as well. So yesterday I decided that I wanted to talk about using decluttering as a healing journey today, and I was kind of really thinking about it as I was falling asleep, and I just kept thinking of all the different ways that decluttering really did facilitate this healing journey for me. I had always struggled with clutter my whole life. I didn't really realize it was problematic. Other people realized it was problematic, but it's something that I didn't really have conscious awareness of. In fact, I did not set out to have a healing journey. I was not even aware that I needed to have a healing journey. I had no awareness of this at all. My life was always so chaotic and busy and stuffed with so many things, and it wasn't until I had all these things happen in my life, all these major changes, and I was going to be having to move, that I really started the process of decluttering. And because I was not only going to be moving out of my house, but also traveling around for the next couple of years, it was just a reality that I was going to have to get rid of almost everything I owned pretty much, not only at my house, but also at my business. I was only going to be able to keep like maybe 10%, if I was lucky, of all the things that I had acquired. And once I made this realization, it was almost like panic set in, because I just had so much stuff and it all seemed meaningful to me. It all seemed like it defined me and it was just necessary to have in my life. I had been collecting things for years. I had been, just gathering things, and I would never let things go. I had things from childhood. I had things from every single phase of my life. And again, I just felt like I wanted to protect all these things, because protecting these things almost felt like I was protecting myself. It was very threatening to me to think that I was going to have to let these things go. I had to start with my entire business, which was a dance studio that just was filled with all these beautiful costumes and props and set pieces and paperwork for years and years and years, and all the practical things that had to do with the business. I had to go through all of that, plus I had to go through my house, which again was just stuffed from top to bottom. And so when I started this process, it was completely overwhelming because I was paralyzed. I felt, again, like I wanted to keep everything. What was interesting, however, was that even on that first day, by the end of the day, I just had something click. I realized that as I started to go through this stuff, as I started to address this stuff, I truly felt empowered. I felt like I was taking control of my life, and that there was this sense of freedom that was overcoming me. And really, as I was going through all these things, I started, thinking about them. All these realizations came to me. And I realized that I had assumed that all of these things had to do with happy memories, and that's why it's going to be difficult to let them go. But I realized that a lot of my stuff had a lot of suffering and pain mixed in from different phases of my life. And really, by holding on to a lot of these items, I had been holding on to a lot of pain and suffering that I could have let go of a long time ago had I made that realization, but I simply hadn't. So when I actually started this process, it was like all of a sudden I could breathe. It all clicked. It started coming together, that I was taking charge of my life, and I was taking charge of what I was going to bring both emotionally and physically into my new life ahead. And once I really got that, the whole process just became extremely enjoyable. It was fun and, again, empowering. I have to go back to that word, because it really felt like I was taking control. I was taking charge. And it was deeply symbolic, because I realized that not only was I, again, getting rid of the emotional and physical clutter in my life, I was also getting rid of huge concepts, my fears. I was getting rid of limiting beliefs, anything that held me back in my life. I realized at that moment I didn't have to hold on to anymore. I could simply let these things go, that it was my choice. And I can tell you quite literally that the decluttering process entirely changed my life. So my true hope for today is that if you've been considering starting a decluttering journey, if you have noticed that clutter, whether it be physical or emotional or mental, has been, contributing to negative consequences in your life, yet you haven't taken that first step because you have been fearful or reluctant for some reason, that you have resisted it, that you've maybe lacked the inspiration or motivation, that today is the day that truly changes for you, and that you take that first step forward, because that's truly all it takes. Once we take that first step forward, it becomes a lot easier and it becomes fun in the end. But if we can take that first step, if we can bring ourselves to take that first step, we are taking the first step in changing our life. So last night when I was thinking about this topic, I really identified 7 major ways that decluttering helped promote healing in my life. And the first one was in self-awareness. I became a lot more self-aware. And I think the important thing here is that we figure out who we are at this moment in our life. So we have all this clutter, so we have really an archive of who we have been in the past. But who are we now? That's what we have to figure out, and that's going to help us to determine what things we need to take forward into the future. Something that also comes up inevitably when we are in this process is figuring out where this clutter actually came from. How did it get this way? How did I develop some kind of dysfunction with clutter? If you have a dysfunction, now for me, I absolutely had dysfunction in the area of clutter, and really going through this decluttering process really helped me to start to work through the origins of these issues for me. And for me, I had many different issues, and then later on I formally studied it. But if this is something that you have not really given a lot of thought to and you would like to, I do have a full video called The Psychology of Disorganization and Clutter, What Your Messy House is Desperately Trying to Tell You. And that video kind of walks you through some of the more common reasons why we may develop a dysfunction with clutter. So I will go ahead and link that down in the description box below. I think one of the most important things that we need to ask ourselves when we set out to start a decluttering journey is to ask ourselves, how am I really feeling right now? How am I doing right now? How is my life going? And if you find that your life is going great, wonderful, no problem, no changes need to be made. But if we're honest with ourselves and we realize that maybe there are things in our life that we wish were different, maybe there are, emotions that are very negative that we are ready to get rid of, maybe there's a new way of life that we aspire to, maybe there's a new path that we want to go on. Once we make that realization, we have to understand that if we continue on with the way we live our life right now, if we make no changes, we will always have the same results. In fact, we won't only have the same results, probably things will tend to get a little bit worse with time. So if we want to actually improve our life and make positive changes, the only way that's going to happen is if we actually change our behavior. If we don't change our behavior, if we don't do things differently, we will again always have those same results. So if we're not really happy with how we're feeling right now or how our life is going, we can understand that it is entirely possible to change all that, but we do have to change our behavior. Now, the second area of my life that I notice healing in is the area of self-esteem and self-empowerment. We already talked about the self-empowerment, but we have to realize that clutter has huge consequences on how we feel about ourselves. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't acknowledge or they don't have conscious awareness of, but it is absolutely true. When we are always seeing all this clutter and experiencing negative consequences, and maybe again we're not even aware of these negative consequences, but believe me, they are there, of these of the clutter, we can experience this sense of self-betrayal because we see a problem but we're not fixing it, we're not helping ourselves, we're not fulfilling our own needs. We can feel helpless, we can feel hopeless, like we are completely unable to address issues in our life, and we can feel a lot of embarrassment because, you know, other people are judgmental of, or we're worried that other people will be judgmental of, you know, our living space or our working space. And so we have all these negative emotions that really get internalized, that really do affect our self-esteem and our self-worth. But the wonderful and incredible thing about all of this is that once we do start on this decluttering journey, once we start to really see for ourselves that we can take control of our lives, and we can look at fears head on and start to, you know, overcome them, we are going to have this renewed sense of self-trust and self-respect, because we can say that we don't have to be a victim. We can completely take charge of our life, and it just takes, you know, really one day of decluttering to start to have this message begin to resonate in our life. And it's amazing by the end of the journey how much we can see our self-esteem really build. Now, the third area of my life that I saw a lot of improvement in and a lot of healing in is learning how to make effective decisions, being decisive. This is something that I had always struggled with. And I think for so many of us, the reason why we struggle with making decisions is because we are so afraid of making the wrong decision. We don't have that self-trust. We feel like we are going to absolutely make the wrong decision, so we think that if we don't make any decisions at all, then we avoid the consequences of making that bad decision. But in reality, when we don't make decisions, we really are making a decision. And that decision is to continue on with our suffering, to never solve problems. And actually, I have absolutely found that the consequence of not making decisions is far worse than making a wrong decision. So all that fear we have about making decisions that leads us to doing nothing actually creates more problems in the long run, and even sometimes in the short term as well. It's a horrible pattern. But when you are decluttering, you have to make decisions. You have to make tons of decisions, and you start to learn very quickly that you are capable. You're capable of making these decisions, and we can get a lot more realistic about what the consequences would be if we made a decision that ultimately we didn't think was the best decision. This is something that we can absolutely get past. So instead of just having all this suffering and chaos in our life because we're so afraid of making that wrong decision, we can learn how to make effective decisions. And also it helps us to become more independent, because when we do not make decisions, guess what? Either we are relying on other people to make decisions, or other people to influence our decisions, or, you know, not making decisions really allows for the universe to make decisions for us, because we get forced in a certain direction because we didn't make, you know, a decision for ourselves. So it really heals the process of making decisions and helps us to gain that confidence, and it helps us to become a lot more independent. Now, the fourth area is the area that I think I had the most significant and meaningful changes in, and that is that I was able to learn how to heal and detach from painful events in my past. I realized that I was holding on to pain and suffering and horrible memories that, you know, I really did need to let go of, but I didn't know how to do that. And the decluttering process really helped me immensely in this area. I think this is because I was forced to address these issues. In the past, I just hadn't allowed myself to even think about them. I was worried about how I would feel if I had to do that, so I just never did. I just kept stuffing them in the back of my mind, and I never really addressed these issues. But what I really noticed was that when I was going through this process, I was able to figure out what my needs are. This is something that I hadn't really even thought about. I was just busy going on with my day-to-day life, and I didn't really understand that I had needs that weren't fulfilled. It also helped me to see where my emotional wounds were. When we get so used to, you know, pushing away the pain and kind of hiding behind our clutter, we never have to address these issues. The problem with that is that if we don't address these issues, we never have healing. We're never able to be free of all these things. And so decluttering really kind of forces us to address these issues, which, really helps us to eventually have that healing that we so desperately need. I found that it was actually really helpful to me to talk out loud to myself, to pick up an item, and when that item kind of had some sadness to it, or some pain still attached to it, really say out loud, you know what? I am releasing you of this pain. We're not going to let these memories and these situations from the past define who I am now. Yes, they're always going to be part of my path. They were part of my history, but I don't need to carry them with me into the future. I don't need to have these physical reminders of these parts of my life that no longer serve me. So I found that really, talking myself through it aloud really was helpful. And it can also be helpful for many, many people to get support in this process. And this support can come from, enlisting the help of a mental health professional to help provide this support, especially if a lot of these items are triggering some uncomfortable memories for you that you need to work through with a professional. Or you can enlist the help of friends and family members who can also provide support at this time as well. Now, the fifth big thing I noticed was the extreme reduction in stress and anxiety in my life. Now, I owned a business, I didn't get a lot of sleep, I had a lot of responsibilities, so naturally I was pretty stressed out a lot of the time. Also, I had dealt with issues with anxiety for years and years and years. Now, I am not saying that decluttering completely eliminated my stress or my anxiety, but I am saying that there was significant improvement. And this was true during the decluttering process itself, as well as, day to day up until right now. I still experience much less stress and anxiety than I did during those times in my life when I was living a very cluttered, disorganized lifestyle. And there is just a ton of research to back the mental health benefits of decluttering. And this is something else that I have made several videos about, and I will go ahead and link them down in the description box below as well. But bottom line, this process can offer help to our well-being that is truly astronomical. Now, the sixth way that I was able to get healing from decluttering was that I was able to say goodbye to a past version of myself that felt overwhelmed all the time, that was surrounded by clutter, that never felt that they were really in control of their life. I was able to understand that I can be a new person if I want to be. And to quote Carl Jung, I am what I choose to become. I can decide for myself what I want my future to be, who I want to be going forward at this point in my life. This was a huge epiphany to me. I was able to finally give myself permission to move on, to again let go of these memories and to let go of these past versions of myself. And on the flip side, it helped me to understand that all the good memories, all the good things in our life that we want to hold on to mentally, that I can have these wonderful memories and these things can all still be part of my life or my timeline without holding on to the objects, that the joy I feel from these memories, from these times in my life, are separate from the actual objects. Now, that does not mean that we can't keep things here and there that remind us of our past. I'm not a minimalist, and certainly I kept many of these little trinkets. But I didn't keep all of them. I was able to let many of them go with the understanding that it doesn't mean that getting rid of these objects is getting rid of these wonderful times in my life. And on a practical note, having the realization that we are a new person now and that we are designing the person that we want to be going forward, we can ask ourselves questions like, does the person that I want to be in the future, or is the person I am now a person that really needs this old sweater or really needs this old stack of magazines that I haven't looked at in 5 years? If we can learn to assess the things we have through the lens of who we are at this moment, we can learn to make a lot better decisions. And the seventh thing that I noticed was that decluttering allowed me to make space for things in my life that matter. I had more time and more energy, and I was able to actually enjoy my home as a sanctuary. I'd certainly never done that before because it was not relaxing at all to be in my house. It was like just a giant storage bin. It's like whenever I went to a hotel, it was just always so relaxing to be in this nice clean space. And it never occurred to me, well, you could just have this in your house, which is what I have now. And it's just an amazing feeling. It's a feeling of freedom that I didn't have before. When our lives are so cluttered, it's like we are not really living. We're just protecting all of our stuff. We are protecting all the things that we have hoarded. And it's kind of like we're sheep herders, just, protecting our flock without really living. So when I was able to declutter, it just made so much more space and time available for me to explore new possibilities. And I have the feeling that the more time I spend reflecting on this, the more realizations I'm going to make about other aspects of my life that were actually healed through this decluttering journey. So I am curious to hear if you have had a decluttering journey, if you have had similar experiences, or if there's anything you'd like to add, or if you are considering starting your own decluttering journey, if this video has inspired you or motivated you in any way. So please let me know in the comments. As always, I truly hope that you found today's video to be helpful and interesting. If you did, please like it, share it, definitely become a subscriber if you are not one already. We absolutely want you to stay connected, and please go ahead and check out the entire playlist that has to do with clutter and clutter psychology. I will leave that in the description box below as well. And I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. I hope the rest of your day is absolutely extraordinary.